Welcome, everyone. We are here today to talk about special topics in managing big data and managing big data projects. Specifically, we'll focus on strategic decision-making today and knowledge management as well. Good morning, and this is Dr. John Jektiani. I'm pleased to be here with you. So what we're going to do is focus on information systems, decision support systems, and how they help organizations make decisions effectively. What the value of improved decision-making is in an organization. I'm also going to want to have you think as you go through this, think about these points. What are the different types of decisions that are made? What are the different processes that support those decisions? How does BI and analytics support these decision frameworks? Can we use intelligent techniques to enable decision-making? What might those look like? What is the relationship between decision-making, BI, and knowledge management? And finally, some things that we're going to consider are the different types of enterprise-wide knowledge management systems that are available and the value that they add to the firms that they support. You might want to think about your last job, your last assignment, whatever it might have been, wherever it might have been in the world. Think about what decisions you made or others had to make around you, your management, the staff that you supported, etc. Think about those decisions and whether information played a role in it. And how was that information harnessed? Was there difficulty in getting that information? I think you'll find a lot of value to this discussion we're about to embark on, especially if you reflect and self-reflect. A case in point, Germany, a few years ago, won the Soccer World Cup. And after they did a lot of analysis, they won by using big data and data analytics. Donald Trump, in 2016, when he won the US presidential election in the United States, there were a lot of factors. Much of it was an upset, even considered by his own administration, meaning they were not actually expecting to win towards the end of that election cycle. But they did, and they used a lot of data analytics through the process in understanding the different parts of the country, what was important, and how to relate to those segments of the population effectively to win votes. And it was fantastic, actually, from a data perspective. So back to Germany, some of the challenges that were faced by the team were that it was a high stakes competition. Technology was being used by competing teams, but their own team could not use data accurately to measure performance and improve on it. So they created Match Insights to get better performance metrics, do thorough analysis of each team, player, and the performance of the equivalent competitor on other teams. And they were able to use these metrics to better manage the team. So how did they do this? They built a detailed database of German and competitor teams based on past matches. They deployed analytical software to measure performance. They made every decision that they made on the team was metrics based. They really moved from a experiential way of managing the team to combine experience with management of data and understanding of data and unleashing of data and harnessing of data, right? They had mobile dashboards available to all the coaches to guide them. Very much demonstrating the use of analysis and key players' characters. They sort of set the stone for and the stage for the World Cup and for soccer. This example also illustrated how information systems improve decision making, right? Because decisions were powered by the data that they were harnessing. Here's a visual about what they did or how they did. They analyzed people. They looked at the whole organization. They used various technologies fired largely by SAP Analytics. They had mobile solutions as well as screen-based solutions. They had screens on the field and mobile iPads empowered devices on every coach's hands, as well as the players. The business challenges were high, right? They really needed to do something. This high stakes competition, a lot of money was on the line, and they wanted to harness the new opportunities available. So they developed match insights, like I mentioned, to do the things we already discussed, namely metrics-based performance management and team management. And this allowed them to optimize all the plays and get the most out of the players. What's the business value? Let's consider the business value of improved decision-making. I mean, many of these decisions companies are making are life and death. It could mean in a heavy competitive environment, survival. It is possible to measure the value of improved decision-making because decision-making is made across the firm, starting with all of us, no matter what role we have in the organization, all the way to the C-level, right? Now remember, many of these decisions are very rudimentary, right? They're run-of-the-mill, they're common and routine, but they can be analyzed and they can be perfected upon using data and metrics. If we can improve all of the small decisions, it adds up. So just pause here and think about what kinds of decisions you have made in previous or current jobs. Do you think they were significant? You should try to express these decision-making experiences to yourselves or to your teammates when we have team-based reinforcement exercises in this class. You can also discuss them in class when we have live classes. Think about a restaurant like McDonald's, right? Just take a pause and think about fast food restaurant like McDonald's. If you've ever been to one, I'm sure you have at least once. Have you ever watched employees perform their jobs? Have you watched employees perform their jobs a few years ago relative to what they're doing now? Could you observe the success of McDonald's depending on the small and minor decisions each employee that you observe might be making? Definitely, right? I mean, McDonald's is reputed for their best fries, right? French fries. And that French fry making process has a very defined process, okay? Very cultured and perfected process. And every employee who is responsible for making fries, for example, follows it. There are some minor decisions that go in, even though the process is prescribed. If those decisions aren't made correctly or are suboptimal, it could impact McDonald's brand. Does that happen? Sure, it happens from time to time, but you don't see it a lot because they're making sure that employees have the information and also are hiring the right people to be able to make those decisions in accordance with the framework that they have for making fries, right? For example. So if that didn't happen, it could cause millions of dollars, perhaps billions of dollars of loss to the firm. We can easily see that. We can easily appreciate it. So although there are big, infrequent decisions of significant value, there's also smaller decisions that add up to a larger value. In other words, systems that make ordinary employees better decision makers can be valuable or more valuable as the systems that improve decision making of senior executives, right, in a company. We can't forget that. So look, you can actually put numbers, right? We have an example here that we're putting numbers around things that a seemingly relatively lower level staff member might be doing, like an accounts manager or a call center manager or an inventory manager, right? You can see that there's impact to the firm that is significant. Depending on the times they make the decision, the value of each decision, and therefore the value to the firm. Well, there's a lot of different types of decisions. Let's just take a moment and talk about the different types of decisions. There's unstructured, the structured, and semi-structured, you know. Unstructured is when the decision maker must provide judgment to solve the problem. It's usually novel, mostly very important decisions, and they're non-routine. So there's no framework. There's no well understood common procedure for making this decision. Structured or repetitive and routine, like the French fry example, right? They involve a definite, proven procedure and are not new. Semi-structured is only addressing part of the problem, right? Because there's a clear-cut answer, but then there isn't in certain instances or part of that decision-making framework. So there are three types, right? If we look at information requirements of the key decision-making groups in a firm, what are they? Well, typically senior management is involved in more of the unstructured decisions, middle management, semi, and operational management, structured decisions, right? They have different types of requirements, informational requirements, to make those decisions. So think about in your own world how a decision, a common decision that you might see every day, which category does it fall into? If you're at work, if you have a work study job, or you're doing an assignment at home, or you're involved in some sort of social activity that requires decision making, think about where it falls on this pyramid and what kind of information do you need, most importantly, because we're trying to, in this class, understand the informational needs of these different decisions. But first, we've got to define the decision-making framework. So what are the different stages in the decision-making process? Well, you've got 4-stage process here that I like to explain. There's the gathering of intelligence. There's the design or the solution discovery. What are the possible solutions, right? How do you first understand the problem, which is the intelligence part, synthesizing the problem, figuring out what the different solutions are, designing the solution, picking the best alternative, which is the choice, and implementing. How can we implement it? But how can we implement it better? Well, in the age of AI, we have computers now, in many cases, making decisions based on a variety of pre-programmed factors. And some of those factors can be learned factors over data. That's why we have those learning algorithms that we've been discussing in our machine learning references in this class. There's high velocity automated decision making. For example, stock trades. You know, computers trade stocks all the time. Over 80 to 90% of the stock trades are done by machines based on parameters. right? In fact, many of the humans involved in stock trades, for example, are eliminated from years gone by, which is why in this crisis, you have a real fear because the stock market is being managed through numbers only and not really much of the sentiment that exists, right? So machines are being feared for bringing down the market and making them quite explosive, either on the short selling side or the long selling side. But decisions have quality. There are dimensions, and quality of decisions can't be ignored. Informational needs are fine, but we have to make sure that decision making adheres to a minimal set of quality. And every firm, every organization defines that for themselves. Some prefer rapid decision making over quality decision making. They're okay making mistakes. Stakes might be lower, and it might be okay to course correct if the wrong decision was made. But other examples, like maybe in healthcare, you don't have that opportunity, right? Patient dies, they die based on a bad decision. You can't revive. So extreme examples, but quality of decisions and the factors matter: accuracy, comprehensiveness, speed, fairness, right? All of these are factors that need to be considered. So if we talk about the BI environment, it can be pretty confusing because we now layer informational needs on these decision-making frameworks. There are many elements that make up business intelligence. Here are the 6 most important that I can think of that I wanted to review. 6 elements include the data and the efficacy of the data. We've been talking about data a lot in this class. So the data is very important. The infrastructure on how to use that data and turn it into information is very important. The tools that leverage that infrastructure are important. Will you be using programming languages? You'll be using prepackaged software, ERP software that we discussed in our last class. What will you be using to harness this data and infrastructure? Will you be providing training to managers? How are the managers going to use these methods and tools? What is the platform of delivery of both the tools, the infrastructure, the data? What's the timeliness of it? Who's supporting the data? What's the data stewardship look like? The delivery of the platform of all of what I just described. How is it going to be delivered? Is it going to be on mobile? What channels are people going to use? And what's it going to look and feel like? What's the user interface going to be like? If it's too confusing or not in time, it's not going to serve a purpose. I support a community website in my community, and I create this website. We created, a bunch of us in our group, are responsible for sort of maintaining the information on this website so members of our community can get the information. I found that the more information that's on a web page, the harder it is to consume. Years gone by, we used to enjoy writing detailed instructions or providing detailed information because people consumed it. Now with the culture changing, the mindset changing, the patience and orientation changing, and I think the technology has enabled it, people are not used to or will not read a web page that's beyond half a page long. What I find is more useful is we put a half a page of 2 or 3 sentences, maybe some pictures to make the point together, and have hyperlinks. Using hyperlinks, people are used to hyperlinking, right? So if they want more information, they'll click here and then they'll traverse down and try to get the information they want. And that seems to be a better way of disseminating information, especially if there's decision-making involved. So it's interesting, I actually experienced that just in the last 2 weeks as we were updating this community website with the advent of COVID-19 and other information around it and how it impacts the community. A lot of information was actually not good and people were not consuming it. And we could tell from the back end, from the analytics of the website, of who's reading the pages and what they're clicking in the clickstream analysis. So we're able to determine that, even that, using data. So BI for decision support involves a bunch of different things. BI is not about just serving up data and reports anymore. We're talking about statistical modeling, data mining. We're talking about clickstream analysis. We're talking about visualizations. In many cases, these platforms are used and drive VR, virtual reality modeling, so people can actually live the decision in a 3D environment, right? Or look at the results or examine data in much more novel ways and quick ways. And we're finding that this is really helping decision making, but users are having to get used to it. So this graphic illustrates in a single slide how all the elements of a business intelligent environment work together. What are some of the capabilities of an effective BI platform once those 6 steps that I mentioned a few slides ago are followed or adhered to? Well, you've got reports, you've got parameterized reports. Example is pivot tables, where you can move things, you can do correlate data from one to the other based on certain parameters, right? Dashboard and scorecards are a great way to summarize information, summarize data. The ability to ad hoc. I used to have a report writer when I used to work in the IBM. I had a report writer that worked for me, and his whole job was in those days to write reports for my end users who were in the sales organization, to give them data that they needed about a client, about about a future prospect, so that they can be very ready with the information. And literally, I had a person dedicated to that. Well, nowadays, to save cost as well as the technology permits not having necessarily an individual doing it, the querying tools have gotten so much easier that end users, even senior members of the organization, can write their own queries and just go and grab the data and slice and dice it using some of these BI platforms. The ability to drill down on sales forecasting data, that was not there when years ago when I was working for IBM supporting the sales organization. To do this effective drill down, you'd have to call my support staff. He'd have to run you a report, and by the next day you'd have it in your inbox. Those days are gone for most companies. We're able to do a self-serve now, right? In my last company that I worked for, we had all of those types of reports coming out of the Salesforce.com system that we implemented, and you can get all of the forecasting drill down data that your heart wanted till your heart's content, right? And there was no additional need. In fact, there was no software. The software was on the cloud. Even the software didn't have to be supported in-house. It was being implemented by another company outside the firewall. So Excel obviously provides a lot of these what if, and so do all the other tools. So BI is all of these put together depending on where and what your decision-making framework needs. So here's some examples, right? Sales examples, marketing, procurement, supply chain, right? These are the types of production reports that might be handy in these functions. I'll let you look at these on your own, at your own leisure further by pausing the video later. But to move along, we've got day-to-day decisions and monitoring that's needed using business intelligence, right? So we call this operational intelligence and analytics thereof. Data developed from sensors or trucks and trains and industrial systems and lighting switches. We've heard of Internet of Things. In my house, I've got, on my phone, I've got data coming from my thermostats in every room telling me what temperature it is and giving me the ability to see the average temperature in a particular room for a day and so on and so forth. So my house and many homes and many things and cars and construction equipment are usually fully connected or moving to a fully connected model. So you can do real-time monitoring. You can see what people are doing. You can examine what lies in the depth of the ocean. A lot of tagging goes on. I heard that like they're in the process or have tagged literally all the bald eagles that are flying around in a good part of the United States, so they can track hibernation, and they can track how these animals are doing and how to bring them back from extinction. Really, they're being threatened. Extinction is being threatened. So they're doing real-time tracking of animals, and and many other things. Really, those are just examples. Now, there are many different types of users of business intelligence systems, and their outputs are different, right? You've got IT, which is the power user category, super users, business analysts, modelers, but management and customers and supply operational employees, you can assume that these are casual users. They need a little bit more hand-holding, right? So decision support systems provide this type of hand-holding. They provide sensitivity analysis, provide what-if analysis mechanisms. They provide things like the pivot table example in the spreadsheet we discussed, and other modeling techniques. So decision support super users, but we also have to unleash this to the casual user. Here's an example of a pivot table that examines customer regional distribution and advertising source. While this is an example, I have my own personal example on my YouTube video channel where all my course material is available, and you can please feel free to review the intermediate Excel class, which is about 2 hours long, and we discuss a personal example that I used with my personal expense data using pivot tables, right, to determine a summary. So in this example, you can see you have data on the left side, you get a pivot table option or dialog box that shows up, and you can supply information to this pivot table field list to be able to summarize your counts by east, north, south, and west geographies, right? So this automatically does it. It takes not even 30 seconds to set this up in Excel, and you can summarize data based on geography. Let's say it's a sales data or some sort of customer count. Very easy to do using this parameterized report option in Excel called pivot table. Talked about balanced scorecard. What is that? In balanced scorecard framework, it's one of the most popular techniques in management and in strategic management, and it's to transform a firm's strategic objectives into operational targets, right? The firm's strategic objectives are operationalized using the balanced scorecard. You're able to measure by establishing key performance indicators or KPIs. So for instance, a firm might decide there are 4 components of their scorecard that they really care for and that they will enable growth and enable healthy company operations. Financial goals are mostly common. You almost always have a financial scorecard for any company, especially if it's a for-profit company. Nonprofit may not be as important, but certainly finance makes every organization run, whether it's for profit or not. Business process, right? Number of activities, process execution time, okay? How many defects do we have, accidents, etc. Learning and growth rates, right? How many people are getting promoted? What is the employee turnover, right? How many people are getting sick? Do we have a problem? And of course, customer performance, right? Customer retention, loyalty. These are key metrics, right? In this example, this firm has identified this and will measure on these periodically to see if they're improving health or not improving health, and they have concerns. And then of course, when they have concerns, they have target areas. They have focus areas that they identify. This slide discusses group discussion support systems. Here, I've got a few notes. It's a type of decision support system that supports group decision making. So, for example, what problems might a group encounter when making a decision in a group? We can think of many. Collaboration, right? Using conference rooms, promoting collaborative atmosphere. Sometimes we have companies or teams that have somewhat not so productive or maybe slightly more toxic environments that they inadvertently create or support, where decisions are supposed to be made in a group, but they're made in isolation behind the scenes. And obviously that doesn't bode well for this type of decision-making framework. There's software that tracks this. You can implement formal processes to enable and alleviate some of these decision-making challenges in groups. So what are neural networks? Okay, so this is one of these intelligent techniques, the fourth one on our list. It's called neural networks. And I want you to, as we go through this, I want you to see how this can be useful in maybe medical profession, right? So what is a neural network? Well, it's a parallel processing framework, right? And it mimics the biological brain. Our brain does not think one track. It's got multiple things going on. It learns every time. It acquires information and stores. It's got this constant learning pattern. And it processes large amounts of data, right? So neural networks mimics the way a biological brain works to the best of our understanding as humans, and it implements it using algorithms. And what it does is it learns from patterns of large quantities, it searches relationships, it builds a model, and it has a framework to correct that model as more data becomes available. So for example, humans train the network by feeding the data. More data, more learning happens, right? This is a classic example of machine learning, right? This is what we use machine learning for. And when this is useful, it's useful for solving complex, poorly understood problems. But it's only applicable when you have large amounts of data. It doesn't work when you have small sample size of data, okay? It needs lots of data so it can extrapolate and correlate and learn the state of operation, and then it applies that state to the decision. Here's a pictorial version of how it actually works. So you pass an example of learning. It's an internal mechanism, algorithm, with a hidden layer of logic that examines existing data, assigning a classification to the data. For example, given one or more combinations of age, income, purchase history, frequency of purchases, so on, a neural network might determine that a new credit card purchase, for example, right, was likely to be fraudulent. What are the benefits and drawback of using these type of techniques? We've all gotten a call from our credit card company, or at least you will, if you haven't, about, hey, is this charge yours? We detect an anomaly in your pattern. And I'm so thankful for those calls because I've prevented a lot of fraudulent attempts, but you got to think about the drawbacks of having this kind of analysis as well. Next, we want to talk about genetic algorithms. What are genetic algorithms? Fifth type of intelligent technique is the genetic algorithm technique, also used within machine learning context. So what this involves is finding the optimal solution of a problem by examining different solutions, right? So the solutions have to be identified in order to apply this genetic algorithm. So it's based on techniques, again, lots of biological references, especially mutation and inheritance. These are concepts that lend itself well to understanding genetic algorithms. That's why they're called genetic. And they work by representing a solution of ons and offs, right? Buttons, zeros and ones, binary, and then selecting randomly generating strings of binary digits to figure out what the optimal solution is. Again, applicable for dynamic, complex, where there's problems where there's many solutions and many variables that influence the solution. Here are components. This looks like chromosomes, right? Each representing a different solution. So you've got zeros and ones of different variables that are apply or don't apply, and then they use an iterative process to refine these solutions so that better ones are developed. And then they emerge as the best solution, right? So there's a decoding and a coding process. Intelligent agents now carry out repetitive tasks for a system, like shopping bots. You'll see those chat bots, shopping bots on online applications on a website. These are examples of intelligent agents. Another example that was used by Procter & Gamble is agent-based modeling. They used agent-based modeling to improve coordination amongst the supply chain. So here's an example of P&G's supply chain network. They use intelligent agents in each step to shorten the replenishment cycle for products. For example, P&G makes Tide. You've got software on the supplier side, an agent bot, if you will, that schedules deliveries from suppliers. If a supplier can't deliver on time, the agent negotiates with other suppliers automatically to get a supplier so that the supply chain is not interrupted. Thank God for this, because we are probably using these. I know we're using these features right now in the pandemic that we're trying to fight as a world with COVID-19. So these agents are constantly rerouting at the moment. Obviously, we'll eventually have a problem if supply runs short, but this automation definitely helps keep the supply chain as uninterrupted as possible. And there are these similar bots in every aspect. For example, the retail store will have agents monitoring real-time sales data and sending that information automatically using inventory management techniques. And the distributor likewise has its own. So P&G actually implemented these intelligent agents. Let's shift gears quickly with a related topic called knowledge management. Very important, right? Business processes are developed for creating and storing, transferring, and applying knowledge. That's why we have business processes, right? We have to be able to harness from them. If we didn't have a process, we'd just be doing everything willy-nilly. But if we have a process, we've got a documented set of knowledge that has transpired itself in a particular framework. So knowledge management can be described from a standpoint of acquiring knowledge to apply it as part of a value chain, and then having a step for each chain, right? Knowledge management helps the organization learn and get better over time, continuous improvement, right? Kaizen, Six Sigma, Lean, these are all based on heavily processed as well as fully functional knowledge management system. You can't improve and have continuous improvement without having effective knowledge management. Because if you don't have effective knowledge management, you're wiping out whatever you're learning and starting effectively from scratch, which obviously is not realistic in today's environment. We know companies are always improving. So knowing how to do things effectively and efficiently in the way that your company, as well as other similar companies, can operate is a major source of profit and a competitive advantage for firms, right? There's three kinds of knowledge, right? And we have to differentiate three different types of knowledge, right? There's implicit knowledge, right? Which is broken down into structured and semi-structured. Structured is text documents, for example, and PowerPoint documents and Excel models and so on. Semi-structured are email, voicemail, digital pictures. We talked about semi-structured and unstructured data and how to categorize and structure it and analyze it and use it in a previous class module of this big data class. There's also tacit, unstructured, completely unstructured knowledge, right? Knowledge in the heads of people. Very often not written down, very often a competitive advantage. Like in many industries, there are people who have knowledge in their head and refuse to write it down on paper, or don't have the ability or the capability or the time or the resources or the inclination, whatever. Enterprise-wide knowledge management system helps solve these problems, okay? They deal with all three different types of knowledge categories. They are often general purpose. They can be applied across industries. They're firm-wide systems that collect, store, and distribute this digital content and knowledge, right? But the idea of systems is digitizing. We have to get the knowledge from heads down to some sort of platform. A content management system is inherent as part of an enterprise management system, right? You've got features like creating and capturing, tagging, storing and retrieving, managing and reviewing content, and distributing and publishing. Much like, think about a website. A website is a content management system, or usually has a content management system that serves it. And obviously these 5 things are done on websites. We see creating, tagging, storing, retrieving, managing, reviewing, publishing, distributing, all in one. And behind the scenes, there's a repository, there's a database, there's an email system, there's what have you, feeds, etc. And they work together, and all of this information works together to give the users or the consumers of this data information. Who are the consumers of the data? Well, they could be those executives, they could be people on the receiving end making those decisions, right, that we talked about. And they are very often. Users are the ones that are making the decisions and running businesses. The systems just serve up information to facilitate that process. So in summary, an enterprise content management system has these capabilities, right, of classifying and managing structured and unstructured and semi-structured data and making it available to all within the enterprise and also external to the enterprise, I might add. Locating and sharing expertise is important, right, in an organization. Knowledge transpires as a network, not as a deliverable. So it's location-based, it has systems, it has processes itself. Knowledge management itself is a very intricate process in a given firm. And providing an understanding of where the experts are is a key piece of knowledge that should exist, okay? If I have a question on X, who do I talk to, right? Who do I attach to? Which systems serve me this information? Usually this is found in like a company portal or so on. Even in NYU, you can go to NYU sites, NYU classes and navigate there to figure out where you can get certain pieces of information, right? And we use technology, obviously, in this day and age to do that. So here's some examples of different work systems that deliver knowledge. You've got VR systems, you've got CAD systems for engineering applications and technical applications, augmented reality, workstations. Okay, you've got a lot of different things where knowledge comes together. Well, this has been an interesting discussion. I hope you've gotten a fair amount from it. I would encourage you to review this discussion again. It was about 45 minutes long. Please review the key salient points. And now for my class students, for next week, you have a reinforcement exercise to examine or think about and reflect upon what we've learned. So just to review what the expectations are, first and foremost, you will be assigned to a team. Your team is the same team we used last week for the reinforcement assignment. So whoever your team members were, those are your team members for this assignment, and you need to connect with them. There were 6 teams. Team 1 was focused on a food supermarket. Team 2, a university such as NYU, for example. Team 3 is a news broadcasting company like CNN. Team 4 is a Home Depot, a home improvement store. Team 5 is a tax authority, and Team 6 is, let's say, a Chase retail bank. What I want you to do is get together as a team of as a team and talk about the following questions and actually create a report. Really not much to talk about question 1, but create a report that's about 1 to 2 pages. Don't make it too long, but don't make it a couple of lines either. It needs some thought and some collaboration. Please include a list of your team members, whether or not each team member was present in the Zoom class we just had yesterday, and whether they completed the required reading. Okay, I want everybody's confirmation that they completed the reading and that they viewed this particular lecture video recording that I provided. Remember, you might have a team member that's been assigned that was not in class. I want you to illustrate that or highlight that in this section of the report. And section 2 is the meaningful part of this assignment. Part A is to provide specific and concrete examples of three types of knowledge that might exist in a company. List several examples of each type. Use the company as per your team assignments above. Assuming the company does not have a current knowledge management system? How might you design an effective knowledge management system? What would it look like? How would you implement it? So I want some details on that. Part 1 should only take you a couple of lines. Part 2 is the rest of the report. Now, while I don't want you to prepare a presentation, I just want you to prepare one PDF document and upload it on the system for grading. I will call on you next week, or some of you, to review your report ad hoc in the class. So be prepared to do that, but you don't need to set up a presentation or a PowerPoint to do that. All right? So I thank you for listening to this video. I thank you in advance for doing this reinforcement assignment. I hope it was beneficial to understand some of these BI principles, knowledge management principles, as they relate to strategic decision making, because that was the key focus. Thank you again all for listening. I will stop the recording here and share it with all of you. Have a great day and a great week ahead.